Hello and welcome to Real Chat. I'm Mark.
And I'm Sophie.
And now Michael Jackson gets the full biopic treatment in the new film Michael, and his fans couldn't be happier. But the critics are not impressed. Are they right? We give you our honest opinions in our review coming up now. Michael follows the life and career of Michael Jackson from his early success with the Jackson 5 to his rise as one of the most influential pop stars in the world. Through recreations of his most famous songs, performances and stage shows, the film highlights his extraordinary musical talent and cultural impact. Central to this portrayal is Jackson's difficult relationship with his father, Joe Jackson, whose strict and often harsh control is shown as a major influence on both Michael's perfectionism and his emotional isolation. Now, how far this contributed to Jackson's complex and controversial character, however, is left for us, the audience, to decide. So, Sophie, how did you get on with this film? How did you feel about it?
I will say, I think the performances in this film were just incredible, just so perfect. As I was watching the film, it was as if I was really watching the Jacksons and really listening to Michael himself as I was watching it. So I thought that was brilliantly done. And a lot of the recreations, especially with the Thriller part, I loved that. I loved the Thriller part.
Really good.
I thought that was great. Again, just the sound and some of the visuals were, again, stunning, and definitely the stylizations of the characters, particularly with Michael and his look. I thought, again, that was great. So I don't have much criticism when it comes to the performances and the visuals of this film. In my opinion, I think that was done great.
Before we set off to the cinema, I had a quick look at Rotten Tomatoes, and just to see what the scores were like. And I saw the critic scores were so low, they're about 35% or something. But the audience score was almost 100%. So I thought, this is really weird. But I'm not a Michael Jackson fan, never have been. Wasn't fussed about seeing this film, to be honest, but I thought we'd better go and see it anyway. And do you know what? I really quite enjoyed this film, I have to say. I thought the first 2/3 of the film in particular, the Jackson 5 stuff, I really, really loved. And as he starts building his solo career as well, like yourself, I particularly enjoyed those creative bits where he's working with the dancers for Beat It. I thought that was a really good insight into his creative process. But also the Thriller video, and you could see he's his own boss, and he had a very clear ideas about what he wanted to do. And I just wish those kinds of elements of the film had been a little bit stronger and more prevalent, shall we say. But the music is fantastic, so I can totally understand why Michael Jackson fans will love this. But I just think music lovers generally, because I really enjoyed the music. You can't go wrong with the music. There's a load of bangers in here, isn't there? It's like a greatest hits package, pretty much. But how does it work as a film, do you think, as a biopic?
I think covering Michael Jackson using a biopic is never really going to work. Not just because his career spans so far and there is so much to cover in such a limited amount of time, but also his controversies. And the way that's presented, I don't think can ever be done in a tasteful way on both sides of the controversy. So, and I firmly believe that if you can't make a biopic to its fullest extent, then you shouldn't make one, because I think they're already at a disadvantage. And I don't think any biopic has ever truly been that good of a film. Because again, they're at such a disadvantage compared to other films. But
wouldn't you say that? I know you're almost suggesting that you've got to do the whole life to be fair to a character, but I don't think that's always possible. So remember we saw the Bob Dylan film and it just zoned in onto his early years. So do you think, even because this film stops in 1988, we must say. And it's not until the early 90s that the controversy over Jackson really, really kicks into gear. Okay, so the film kind of ends when he's at his zenith. Do you still think that wasn't?
I think that's why making this biopic didn't work because with Bob Dylan, we see him in the film as a very flawed person and pretty unlikable, even despite how good his music is, right? But with this film, because they couldn't include those controversies and they couldn't get past that point in his career, all Michael Jackson was viewed as was this pure soul, this kind man, like just his only flaw was being too perfect, and that's not the way you should go about characters just in general, no matter like what kind of film you're making. If you have like a character, they should have some kind of obstacle. But I didn't feel that way with Michael in this film, and his character felt so shallow because of it. Even his father, this terrible and abusive man, felt like he had more depth and complexity than Michael himself, and that was so disappointing to see. This film had a lot of potential because there were great things about it, but I didn't like the way Michael was portrayed in this film because we only saw good parts. We only saw the good sides of Michael and nothing more than that.
I kind of agree with you that I do get this business from the critics saying it's a whitewash, it's one-sided, it avoids the controversy. You are getting the authorized version of Michael Jackson here. It is a film that's been signed off by the Jackson family. Yeah. They are preserving the legacy. So I take your point. I will say, though, I don't think they shy away too much from his weirdness. Yes, he has a difficult childhood, okay, but you do see his kind of oddness with, with his animals as friends and so on, his obsession with Peter Pan, Neverland, black and white films, Charlie Chaplin, his kind of dependent relationship with his mother, and so on. And he doesn't shy away from the fact that he does gravitate towards children, younger people, though in a fairly uncontroversial way, the film paints him out as being almost messianic, I suppose. Yeah. in how he's just purely motivated by goodness, so that there's no suggestion whatsoever that there's something darker. But I think for audiences today, having known some of the backstory, it may play differently with different people, because some people have always been on one side of the fence or the other.
I think that is another issue I find with the film, because it perpetuates this idea that a lot of his fans have, that all Michael Jackson was like a child stuck in a grown man's body, which I think those kind of ideas about anyone is harmful, particularly to people who have had those allegations against them. And I'm not going to accuse Michael of anything, but I do think that when someone has those controversies, you shouldn't view the person as that. Like, I just think it's really wrong and very probably disrespectful to any potential victims of Michael or any potential victims of those kinds of crimes. Again, I think it was a shallow portrayal of who he was.
The filmmakers were trying to do something more than what we got, because I have read since watching the film that the ending that we got was not the ending that had been filmed, and it had to be reshot. What was wrong with the film for me, I said this as I came out of the cinema, was that it was the final third of the film. I felt it dragged somewhat, and it kind of lost its drama. There was lots of things I felt were set up in the early part that were never completely realised. There was a moment in the film where his father says to him, look, you want to break out on your own, but you need the protection of the family. Can you imagine what could go wrong when you've got no boundaries and you've got people around you saying yes to everything? It was kind of a very prophetic moment. And it's not realised in the third act of the film. However, had those allegations been on film, then we would have got a much more, I think we would have got a more satisfying ending to the film. But as it stands, the film just feels like a greatest hits collection. And the emotional focus of the film just seems to be about the struggle between Michael finding his independence against his abusive father. You do get some sense of closure in that final performance, but it's not a great ending, and it does come up in the titles. His story continues. So whether that means there's going to be a sequel or not, not really sure.
Well, I mean, I don't know how true this is, but I've heard that maybe if the film does pretty good, they might do like the second half of his life, which I don't think that would make a very good film in my opinion. I just think don't bother. I don't think any film that ends with a hint at a sequel, just leave out. I don't know why they do that, because they just set themselves up, I feel, every time. Anyways, that was just overall throughout the film I was entertained, and there wasn't really any kind of boring moment for me. So I think that it definitely is a plus. And if you are a Michael Jackson fan, I guarantee you will like this film in one way or another. Probably even love this film, in my opinion. I think it's great for the Jackson fans.
Yeah, I think if you're not looking for a sort of deep psychological analysis of Michael Jackson, you're gonna love the greatest hits package that you get in this.
Yeah.
And the visuals are stunning. I mean,
Agreed.
You've got a top director and a great writer involved. Okay, the characterization is a little shallow. Perhaps we don't really get to know the real Michael Jackson, if it's even possible. Do I think it's as bad as what the critics have said? No, I don't think it's that bad. I felt really entertained. Okay, I think we're ready to do our scores now.
Yeah.
Okay. So here are our scores for Michael. So from me, it's a 6.
From me, it's a 4.7.
4.7. So slight variation there. I still think it's worth going to see. It's a great collection of tunes. You're not going to get the controversy. Okay.
Nope.
And if you're a Michael Jackson fan, you'll love this.
Definitely
Okay.
love it.
That's all for us today. If you like what we do, please click and subscribe. We do bring reviews out every week. But it's bye-bye from me.
Bye.